Hello and welcome to another podcast episode. I am really enjoying speaking off the cuff to everything that I'm receiving, all of the questions that come to me on repeat and sharing them with you. So I would love to ask that if you're enjoying the podcast, please share an episode or my podcast with a friend. And I would absolutely love if you're able to leave a 5-star review and some comments. I absolutely love reading them. Okay, so this is a question that often comes to me in groups. It's a desire, and it goes along the lines of, I would really love to stop the feelings of anxiety and worry. And before I ask the person context and find out what is it that they could release on, I always love to provide a little bit of coaching to give some perspective on this. So in life, we are designed to feel a whole range of emotions on the spectrum, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. There are so many states of being, there are so many emotions that we can experience on this spectrum, and it is what makes life interesting. So I believe that anxiety and the polar opposite of it, being depression, is completely normal. And I know that I have felt experience of anxiety and I have had moments of depression. And what's not normal is to stay in very heightened states of anxiety or deep lows of depression for long periods of time where they are so strong that it actually stops you from functioning in day-to-day life. So heightened states of anxiety, or the opposite of deep, dark depression, that is so strong that it might stop you from attending work. It might stop you being able to look after your family. It might stop you from being able to do the mundane, everyday tasks of life. It may stop you from finding joy in your life. Okay, so this is the states of anxiety, and let's talk about depression as well, or any heightened sustained state that stops you functioning. This is the undesirable manifestation that people usually want to move out of. So it is normal, but it's not normal when it is so strong, so sustained for a long period of time that it stops you functioning in your day, in your life, in the world. So anxiety is completely normal. And I love people to sit in what I call the negative emotions, but I feel like there are no negative emotions. States of being, they are just what they are, and they're here to be experienced. They're here to be processed. They are here to be discharged and moved through. And what I teach is that we often store these emotions because we don't know how to express them. We don't know how to process them because we're either too busy or we just simply haven't been role modeled or taught how to. So that's the work that I love to do, is teach people, how can you process your emotions? How can you actually feel what you haven't allowed yourself to feel in the past? And that really helps you tap into the future. So anxiety is completely normal. And we feel it when we don't know, when we step into the unknown. And I see it a lot in my daughter, how she starts to feel anxious. She gets butterflies in her tummy. She talks about getting sick in her tummy whenever there is something new. Now, we're trying to teach her to trust us, that we wouldn't put her in any unsafe situations or experiences. And what I'm often sharing with her is, hey, Violet, do you know, anytime you are about to experience something new and you don't know what it's like, you often feel like this. But then when you actually go and do the thing, you say to us, that was amazing. That was the best day ever. I want to do it again. I want to do it again. And we have to remind her of these experiences, of the evidence that she has had. So I think it is completely normal to feel anxious if you have not experienced something before. But how is it that you move through something that you know that you shouldn't be anxious about? And actually, I want to touch on now what comes into my brain is that there is going to be a period of time, if you go on this path of self-development, personal development, where for me and my clients that I work with, it starts with processing your emotions. Then you start to tap into soul purpose and knowing that you can actually manifest and create your life. And then moving into what I call the third stage is accessing your intuition and knowing, where decisions based on intuition don't necessarily make sense. You are constantly going to be stepping into the unknown, and this can be uncomfortable. So that can elicit feelings of anxiety. And if you haven't learned to have a good and healthy relationship with anxiety or understand where your anxiety is coming from, then it can paralyze you from actually moving forwards in this direction. And unfortunately, some people will just put a stop to it because it feels incredibly uncomfortable. So that is where you're going to come across anxiety in what I feel is a positive way when you start to step into the unknown and actually get comfortable to trust your intuition that even though it doesn't make logical sense, it's all going to work out. So a lot of the people that ask this question, it's usually centered around situations where their body is reacting, it's in a heightened state, and they know it's stopping them from doing day-to-day type activities. So this is what I can sometimes call like irrational fears or irrational anxiety. Their brain knows, but their nervous system just completely reacts. Now, in my world, what I work with is just simply start processing your emotions. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the anxiety, but when we have all these stored emotions in our body, they contribute to our nervous system having less of a threshold. I call it our emotional cup, where we can compensate, and then eventually the emotional cup spills over. Or this is where you might feel like your nervous system gets dysregulated and you just can't cope with a situation, a day, or life. So it's starting off with whatever the event is recognizing what is the end goal, what is the end result. And this is where, if someone gave me an example, I would be able to speak to that more clearly. But the reason this question came up is because it's in one of my private groups, so I won't go into that detail, but you're more than welcome to ask me a question and I can actually speak to it on the podcast if you like. I'd love you to send me a voice message about it. Okay, so it's knowing what is the end result, but then to start to break it down. Actually, this is an example that I can use that has come to me a lot because of the groups that I am running, is that some people find themselves very uncomfortable in group situations and they find their anxiety heightened, their throat closes up, they want to be in this group, but they can't share. And then they think something's wrong with them because they break into sweats, they just can't even bring themselves to ask a question in front of the group. But they're in the group because they know that this is something that they desire. They desire to be sharing like some of the other people on the group that are sharing vulnerable things. They know that there is a benefit to being in group energy and feeling supported by other people and not having to go at it all alone. So how do you work with that anxiety? Okay, I've got them processing emotions, not related to that in the background. Helping their nervous system feel safe, helping their nervous system learn to regulate. And then every now and then, there might be a suggestion to just stretch themselves. So that might be, well, can you bring yourself to just share how you're feeling in the chat? You don't even have to unmute yourself and speak out loud. Then you might just do that for a couple of weeks in a row and notice that, okay, my nervous system reacts, but actually it's completely fine. Because the more you do something, the easier it gets. When you realize you don't die because you do the thing, it gets easier and easier. And your nervous system starts to feel safer. And all of these irrational fears of what would happen if I did this don't come to fruition, it gets easier. So it might be typing in the chat first. It might even be before that, just come and show up to a live group call. Come and show up. Maybe not with your video on. The next time it's come with your video on for a couple of times. And then the next time it is I type in the chat and I share how I feel. The next time is I'll support someone in the chat. The next time is I might ask something in the chat and I'll have Jen respond to it. And after a few more times where they're feeling a little bit more comfortable, they might stretch themselves again and go, right, now I'm ready to put my hand up, have my video on, ask a question, and interact with Jen. So I've experienced it many times, and because my work is really deep and I'm very direct, that sometimes they come on the screen and it's quite full on to receive that. And they might be exhausted after that call because they've stretched the nervous system in so many ways. But can you see how I've broken it down to I want to be in a group environment. I want to be sharing. I want to be interacting with Jen. I want to be receiving her coaching and being able to really hear it and hear myself ask the question and not break out in a sweat. Well, these are the steps. It's a little bit like working on desires. You want to be, or if you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, your desires up here. I've talked about this a lot recently. You're down here. You've got to recognize that there are little steps that you can take and sometimes big leaps in between. So that's an example of anxiety. It's really practically looking at it, breaking it down, letting your nervous system just stretch a little bit each time, recognizing that you're absolutely okay, that you didn't die, and then stretch yourself again and again. Because I still myself experience anxiety for anything I haven't done. My mind goes to, what if this doesn't work? And all the fears. And I very quickly remind myself, well, what if it all goes well? What if this is successful? What if this is exactly what I desired? What if it is everything beyond what I knew was possible? Okay, so I try and get myself into that state very quickly rather than dwelling in all the stuff that's quite negative and the fears that would hold me back. And then I do it again, again, and again. So I use the example of launching my release course, which is my signature 6-week course that helps people learn how to process their emotions. It teaches them the release process. I am now in the midst of the 7th round, and it's incredible. But I remember the first time I launched this program, I had no idea. And actually it was my biggest intake. I had 70 people in the group, including support coaches. I needed support coaches because I had that many. It was first time running it. I wasn't too sure if I could do it on my own. I've also shared with my group that it's the one of 2 times in the last 4 years that I have been sick because my nervous system got so stretched. And I don't believe anyone else makes you sick. I made myself sick because I was so stressed about it. And then it was just the best thing ever. I also believe that anxious energy was excitement energy, and it did help sell that many spots into the course. Now, I haven't had those numbers again, and this kind of goes into what is my capacity to hold and also where are my values. I'm really enjoying my intimate groups. So usually there's about anywhere between 15 to 30 people on the more recent rounds of release, and I really love it. Okay, so each time I learned something different about launching the program. Each time it got easier because a level of work was already done. Each time I was able to see what I wasn't able to see the previous time. And this 7th time around, I actually went on a horse trip. Now I did have reception, but I didn't think I was going to have reception. In the past, when I was launching a program, there is no way I would be leaving my computer. There is no way I would be out of reception. But I've learned all the things that I feared. Maybe some of them came to fruition and they weren't that bad, but a lot of them didn't. And I got to start to learn once I had the structure that I could bring more ease and flow and joy and fun and pleasure into the process. So that's a business example. Running release for the 7th time, it's just I trust that people are going to come on board, and I have room and space for new ideas. So I think there's a lot of value in repeating things in business, knowing that it will get easier. So no longer have feelings of anxiety. It's just we're doing this. Okay. If I have a new offer, I go through all sorts of feelings and emotions. And that's usually when I lean on support, when I will be doing a ton of releases, because when I make decisions to put something new out there, it's usually embodying a new level of myself. And there are challenges that come my way that really test me. Like, do I really want this? So how is it that you can get rid of feelings of anxiety and worry is usually the question that comes to me. I don't want you to get rid of feelings of anxiety, worry, or depression. This is all here to be experienced. And it's not normal to experience it for sustained periods of time in heightened or strong states that paralyze you from day-to-day living. And this is where I guess if you're really in that amount of pain, then it can be very difficult to access your emotions. And that is where you might do some, I can't think of another word. Some people are going to get annoyed with me saying this, but maybe a little bit more superficial work, which could be things like mindset work, Mindset work lands very differently before and after you've done emotional work. It sticks more if you've actually got space to put the mindset work in there. But I often say that it is another tool or technique to add on top. Sometimes it'll stick for people, but there are more easier things that you might want to do to get yourself out of pain. That includes possibly medication. And actually, I did do a podcast on coming off antidepressants is the title of it. And that would be really good to listen to in conjunction with this, because sometimes when the pain is so bad, the anxiety, the depression is so bad, you may require medical intervention, pharmaceutical intervention. Maybe if it's not so bad, it could be herbal. But get yourself out of that pain, but do the work so that you can eventually come off those drugs, off that medication. Do the deeper work so the stuff actually sticks. Okay, same as if you're actually in physical pain, you might need painkillers, you might need anti-inflammatories if you were just kind of losing your mind around it. And then when you are in less heightened states of pain, then you can start to access your emotions, which is the deeper work, which is the harder work that I know so many people resist. And I just love and I honor the people that have the courage and the bravery to step into the world of processing their emotions. It is fascinating. It's not easy, but it is incredibly liberating. Then the last thing that I mentioned about anxiety is how can you recognize what your goal, your ultimate desire is, and actually break it down into baby steps and recognize that if you just take your time and stretch yourself a little bit every now and then maybe sit in that new stretchy sensation, stretchy action for a handful of days or weeks until it feels comfortable and go, yay, I did that. Then you can add the next level stretch, the next level stretch. If you just keep on thinking that you need to throw yourself into what you ultimately want it to look like, that's often when it becomes paralyzing and then you don't actually make any progress forwards. So I hope that I can really share with you that anxiety, depression, and all the bits in between are completely normal. Hopefully they are more fleeting. Hopefully you are able to process them, feel them all, and not actually get yourself to the point of being in these sustained, heightened or strong states that paralyze you in life.